Hi, my name is Justin. This is Nooks Cooks. Today I'm going to be cooking Suam na Mais, so let's start. Suam na Mais is a corn soup from the Philippine province of Pampanga, the province that my family is from. I call it Suam for short, and in the name there's mais. If you're familiar with the Spanish word for corn, it's mais. In Tagalog, this dish is also known as ginasaang mais, but we're gonna go with Suam because that's what I grew up with. And as summer approaches, I wanna tell you that summer is my favorite by far of all the seasons because of all the food, the produce that comes along with summer. In this case, it's corn, but I love tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and stone fruits and strawberries, and the list goes on. You name it, I love it for summer. And because of that, I'm gonna be incorporating more summer ingredients into my recipes during this season, either from my local farmer's market, or I'm excited to say that from my garden. As those things grow along, I'm gonna show you a little bit of that in a sec, so let's start. Welcome to my garden. Here we have my spinach growing. There's some eggplants back here, but let's focus on harvesting some spinach. Here are the ingredients for Suam, starting with onion and garlic, which you find in almost every single Filipino dish. And here's the star of the show, corn. This is a white sweet corn that's grown locally. In the Philippines, they like to use a corn that has a high starch content, which makes for a thicker soup. Kapampangan, the word that my mom uses is mapeka, which means sticky. So this corn will do just great for this. And here is the spinach that I just harvested in the garden. And I was thinking about how spinach likes to grow in cooler climates, and the Philippines is not necessarily what you'd call a cool climate. So when I did some more research, I saw that Malabar spinach is used in the Philippines. That's the Western term for it. And Malabar spinach is a vining leafy green. It's not even a true spinach that likes hot and humid climates. I could have grown that here, but I have very limited use for it I guess, other than this dish. So I am using the typical Western style spinach that you find. Other types of greens you could use in this include moringa leaves, or the leaves of bitter melon. And when it comes to protein, here I have some pork shoulder. You can use pork shoulder, you can use shrimp, you can use a combination of the two. And lastly, we have water for the soup. Oh, one more thing. I did not incorporate it today because it's not the most easily accessible ingredient, which is squash flowers. They make the dish really pretty. They add a little bit of flavor, and I didn't have any growing yet in my garden. And two, they're not really easily accessible. They only grow for a certain amount of time, and they're just hard to find. So maybe I'll post a picture of it in the future. So if you follow my Instagram, you might be able to see a version of this with the squash flowers. But other than that, here are the ingredients. I find that shucking corn can be pretty messy, so instead of the traditional way of pulling back the husk, I'll take a knife and I'll go on the opposite end, opposite of the side that you pull the husk from, at the base, and then I'll go right to where there's the bump, take a knife, and cut off that end. And then, let's see if I did it right. Maybe I didn't cut it far enough. Okay. I'm gonna cut it a little further back. I find this just a better way to get all the strings out at once. Okay. Put it down here. Not bad. Yeah, I just find it a little bit easier to do rather than pulling, and then you have multiple pieces that you have to throw away. I mean, you always have to deal with these strings, but try to do the best you can. All right, let's do the rest of these. So I have 8 ears of corn for this recipe. This recipe only has a few ingredients in it, so it's important to level up the flavors and textures. And one of the things that I do with the corn is I will cut it in different ways to incorporate into the soup. So one of the ways to best cut corn in the way that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a bowl into a bigger bowl. I've also seen people use like a bundt pan, but we're gonna have a big bowl and we're gonna have a smaller bowl inside. And then we're gonna cut off all the kernels of the corn. But one of the really important points that I want you to take from this is I'm not gonna cut the kernels all the way to the cob. I'm gonna cut them about halfway through because I find that when you cut it all the way, just the kernels are a little bit too big in contrast with the rest of the soup. So, and this also releases the starch. So I'm only gonna cut like halfway through the kernel, all the way around and down. And I mentioned that I want to have some different textures, so you can see that I split it into two separate things of corn, 4 and 4. So here we are going deeper to the cob. We want to make sure we get all of it, so nothing goes to waste. And this is a little bit messy. There will be juice from the corn that flies all over the place. So hence the apron. Then I'm just gonna cut the corn here. And like I said, I don't want to waste anything, so I'm going to take the blade of the knife and I run it down the cob. And this is where it gets messy and all over the place. But this gets all that corn flavor. Even if it's a little bit, it'll add up out of the cob. And I repeat that for the remaining 3 ears of corn. Now that that first 4 ears of corn are done, I'm gonna go back in and there will be parts that are still together. So I'm just gonna break those all up by hand. So this is our first layer, our first texture of corn in this dish. Yeah, just gonna break that all up. Okay, we have the first texture of the corn, and now we're gonna move on to the second texture of the corn. Let's see if I have to use a bowl for this, if I can reach. Let's see, might be sketchy. Okay, so I have a box grater, and then this is where, hold on, there's still a lot of the strings from the corn. We want to minimize that. It's really difficult to get all of it out, but we'll do our best. Okay, then I'm gonna take a box grater and then we're gonna grate the corn. And this really gets all the starch out. And I mentioned before that the type of corn that they use in the Philippines has a lot of starch in it. And this one will do. And one of the best ways to maximize that is to use a box grater. And this is a way that that corn flavor gets everywhere, especially into the soup. It's not just like free pieces of corn floating in a broth. We don't want anything to go to waste. And this corn this time of the year is so good that you really want to get all that sweet corn flavor in there. And after this, I'll change the angle and then you can see what is coming out of here. But you can tell this is different from these cobs. I mean, this one's a lot drier because of the way that we cut it, but because we're using the box grater, it really gets all that liquid out there, kind of activates that starch for this soup. Careful, don't take out my finger. But yeah, you can really get into this corn. Get that out. And it's gonna be totally worth it in the end to get that corn flavor out. Okay, here's one. I'm gonna change up the angle so you can see what's going on here. Here's another angle of the corn with the box grater. You can see that it's coming out much different than if you were to just cut it with a knife. This gets all the liquid out of that corn. You can see here's that corn. I don't even know what you would call this texture, but it's actually kind of fluffy. But that's gonna all mix in with the whole kernels or partial kernels that we cut using a knife. It's gonna add some nice different textures in this dish, so it's not all one note of corn. Here's the corn. You can see we have multiple textures. We have string there. Take that out. Multiple textures of corn. And all those starches. Then we have some larger kernels for texture. Then you mince the garlic. This is garlic that I grew in my garden, so the cloves are really small, hence many more cloves than the 4 to 6 that I listed. Dice an onion. Now I start cutting the pork shoulder into 1/4 inch thick slices. Then I take those slices and further cut them down into bite-sized pieces. There's plenty of fat in this cut of meat, so any excess fat I cut it out. This entire dish can be cooked in one pot. Line the bottom of the pot with neutral oil. Here I'm using vegetable oil. Then put in the pork and cook until brown. Season the pork with a couple pinches of kosher salt. You want to be patient with cooking the pork, waiting until the meat develops a deep brown color. At this point the fat has rendered out and the meat is cooking in its own fat, like a confit. Now carefully remove the cooked pork. I'm saving the fat to cook down the onions and garlic. Cook down the diced onions in the rendered pork fat until translucent. Add in the garlic and cook until fragrant. Now add in the corn. And season with a couple pinches of salt. At medium-high heat, I constantly stir the corn until nearly all the moisture has cooked off. You want to continuously stir to avoid burning the bottom. This step takes at least 5 minutes. Once the moisture has all cooked off, add water. Add in the cooked pork. Simmer for 25 to 30 minutes or until the soup starts developing a thick consistency. Once the soup has reached your desired consistency, give it a taste. And season to taste one last time with salt or fish sauce. Turn off the heat and add in the spinach. Gently mix in the spinach and you're done. If you're lucky enough to have squash blossoms, this is when you would add them. The Suam is done and it's time to give it a taste. Ooh, look at that. Okay, mangantamo, let's eat. Get a little bit of the pork, corn, you can't miss the corn, it's everywhere, and then the spinach. Have one big bite. Ready? This is so good. I miss this. I haven't had this, for over a year. Because this is one of those dishes that you can only make when a certain ingredient is in season. So corn is in season, so you only get to taste this for a short amount of time, and whew, it is so, man, I didn't realize I would feel like this. This is so good. It's crazy because I had to add a bunch of salt to season it because this corn is so sweet. It was almost tasting like a dessert had it not been for the pork in there. And everything just tastes so fresh. The corn was probably picked within the last 2 days. And the spinach, we just walked right outside to the garden and mañana. This is so good. You have all the different textures of corn. You have the corn that's going through the soup, like the liquid part through the soup. You have the kernels of corn that are not too big, but just enough to get in a little bite. So you have the contrast of the sweetness of the corn, the saltiness from the pork, and just like overall freshness of this dish. So this is, I feel like I say this for every single dish, but man, this is one of my favorites. I think this is such a treat because you only get to have it ever so often because of the season. I love this. And I think this is a great dish for a lot of people to try try to make because none of the ingredients are specific to going to like an Asian specialty store or Asian specialty grocery store. Everything you can buy at a typical Western grocery store. Corn, when it's in season, pork, spinach, onion, garlic, and then water. So it's so simple. It's a very simple dish, but when executed correctly, oh, it's delicious. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm hoping to incorporate more and more of seasonal ingredients and anything and everything that I can get from my garden so we can bring you the best dishes to this channel. So leave a comment down below what your favorite seasonal dish is, and remember to like and subscribe. Peace!